After much anticipation, we finally got our very first look at the official teaser trailer for this generation's Superman, and it's safe to say I'm pretty conflicted. Some of the positives that I actually saw throughout this teaser trailer, and there's a fair few of them to be completely honest. I think the first one is off the back of the music. I think the music throughout this is really, really solid. We kind of have this, it's almost like a remixed rendition of the original John Williams theme. We can hear this humming, and it's the iconic original Superman piece. It builds up slowly and climaxes throughout the trailer. It's brilliant. I mean, if that's the Superman theme that we're going to have for this film, I think great. It needs to be something new, but I guess if you can sort of use and remix that original Christopher Reeves, Richard Donner, John Williams classic Superman, that's great, because it does seem like obviously we are going in such a different direction from Zack Snyder and Henry Cavill's Man of Steel. And just talking about those themes quickly, I think for me, obviously the John Williams theme is absolutely iconic, and just I grew up on that theme, and Hans Zimmer's Man of Steel theme is absolutely legendary, and I don't think you could have tried to outdo the actual Man of Steel theme, so it does make sense, and I think it's a good idea to actually harpen back to the original Superman theme. Something else which I really like throughout this trailer, and again, it is relating to the original Superman, it's the title cards. I think the title cards look great, and we see these graphics many times throughout the actual trailer. It looks great. It's a throwback, and it's hinting back to the original brilliant, iconic, I'm saying iconic quite a few times, but it's true, the Christopher Reeves, Richard Donner Superman film, and I do like the aspect of this film being a throwback and sort of being a bit of a revival of the traditional Superman. We had Man of Steel, thought, to be completely honest, it was a great tale and a great version of a darker Superman, a much more realistic and gritty, grounded version of the character, but it does make sense that we are going a little bit lighter. I really enjoy the actual theme and the title card look from this trailer. And now this is where it starts to get a little bit, I guess some could say negative, but there's many things throughout this trailer which I'm struggling to understand, and I guess you could say it's not what I was expecting, but I wasn't really expecting a huge amount from a first teaser trailer. But first of all, I think one of my major complaints is actually the camera work and the visual style of this teaser trailer. So, doing a little bit of research, and James Gunn has previously used Henry Braham for about 4 or 5 films now, all throughout his filmography, starting way back, I believe it was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in 2017. This cinematographer has a very distinctive style of camera work and directing visually, because I don't know if you people that have seen this trailer, I feel like I'm one of the only people which has actually noticed and picked up on this, but the camera is constantly moving. The shots are never locked off on a tripod and steady or still. So it is something that kind of irritated me throughout some of the earlier, I guess you could say, James Gunn films, but with the Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, this guy even was the director of photography, the cinematographer you could say, for the Flash movie 2023 released, and it really does irritate me. I find it incredibly strange that the camera's never locked off. It feels a little bit lazy. It doesn't have that real, true, cinematic, grand style to it, which a film like Man of Steel does. And don't get me wrong, I think, as a fan of Man of Steel, and I've never praised Man of Steel to the highest heights in terms of Man of Steel is a flawed film. There are many aspects of Man of Steel which aren't perfect. I mean, on one hand, it is a very, very good tale of a darker, grounder Superman, but on the other hand, there's many problems with that film. The third act is messy, it's discombobulated. I mean, yeah, it's just the third act is a little bit of a mess on a whole, and it isn't a perfect film, but if you take a look at the Man of Steel trailers or the teasers from that film, which are released in a similar window to the Superman, so you can't complain about, oh, the film's still being edited or anything along those lines. Man of Steel looks leaps and bounds just better, I believe, than the Superman trailer. And going back to Henry Braham, he was also recently the cinematographer for the Amazon Prime Roadhouse film with Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor. And it's funny because I didn't actually know this at the time, but I found that camera style, the whole cinematography throughout that entire film, to be incredibly distracting. It almost feels like you've had a few drinks or you're on a ship and it's kind of moving a little bit constantly, you're never settled, it's kind of panning along and you're moving in and out of objects, and I guess that is just his cinematic style, you could say, but to me, it feels lazy. It feels I was going to say a little bit, but it feels lazy. It just doesn't sit right with me, and it kind of triggers me throughout this whole trailer. If you watch it back the camera is moving constantly, but even on shots that should be locked off or should be still and you should be able to sit there and watch the camera be steady, it's shaking, or it's slowly moving from left to right and up and down. And yes, this is a little bit dramatic, I guess you could say, over cinematic style of camera work on a teaser trailer for a film which is coming out in 7 months, but is this where we're going to go with the DCU? This kind of, I guess you could say, lazy camera style? I really hope not. I guess you could relate this to other points and some of the other issues that I actually have with this teaser trailer, and don't get me wrong, I really hope this film is brilliant. I hope this film is great. I would love for this Superman to be absolutely iconic, and don't get me wrong, I would love it if this film delivered, if it was absolutely fantastic, and if I walked out of the cinema in July and I thought, that is incredible, we are setting up the DCU on a high note, and I can't wait for the rest of the films in this universe. It would create this incredible battle between Marvel and DC, moving into the end of this decade and on to next in just a fantastic way. It's going to be competitive, there's going to be the two rivals battling it out. It'd be great, but I am slightly disappointed with the way this trailer looks. It feels like The Flash, it feels like Shazam, it feels like the DC EU of old. It feels cheap, clunky, and I've mentioned the camera work. Something else is the colour palette. The colour palette it doesn't look right. It does not look right. And I guess you can say, yeah, the film's 7 months away, there's things that need to be done, but James Gunn has had this very distinctive colour palette, and this almost looks like a cheap filter. Like a filter you would see on a social media app for around 3 to 4 films now. And I guess Guardians 2 is probably the last film which didn't have this really washed out, strange colour palette. And what worries me, and what may be creating this overreaction, I guess you could say, is the fact that DCEU is going to be like this going forward. And due to James Gunn having such a big involvement, it kind of worries me that all of these films coming out and this great lineup and this slate, which seems incredible, is going to have the same visual look. David Corenswet, he looks fine. I don't think he didn't blow me away in the trailer by any means. I don't think he's an overly convincing Superman or Clark Kent by any means, especially with that daft, stupid, fake haircut. But it does make sense because Henry Cavill's Clark Kent, he was probably a little bit too macho, and he didn't really convey a different version of Clark Kent. It was kind of just this version of Henry Cavill in a shirt and tie with glasses on. So I do kind of get what they're going for with the strange David Corenswet haircut and kind of trying to make him a little bit nerdy, but it does seem, again, I'm going to use the word, but a little bit fake and a little bit corny. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane looks fine. I think Amy Adams, and I know it's kind of irritating that I'm going back to Man of Steel constantly. It was a film that now was 12 years ago and I'm harping on back to it, but I think Amy Adams was a very, very solid version of Lois Lane in Man of Steel, and people are going to compare Rachel Brosnahan to her, so it's a different version of the character. The look is completely different, and I think she looks fine. Didn't blow me out of the water, but her and Clark Kent, Lois Lane and Clark Kent, look pretty good, I guess you could say. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I quite like the look. I quite like the look of Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, and we see Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, and he again kind of reminds me of a character from The Boys. And Hawkgirl, I'm going to be completely honest, I've not really read too many comics, so I don't understand too much around the history of Hawkgirl, so I'll leave that for other people, but I understand it is a different Clark Kent, but his hair, come on, it looks so fake, and just some of the masks and the characters that we see during the end of this trailer, they kind of look like they're from an episode of The Boys, and don't get me wrong, The Boys is quite a solid show, I enjoy it, but it's the over CGI, this very, very clean superhero look where they look like they've got the suits freshly out of the wash and they don't look quite right. And I do understand that Crypto the dog, he cannot be a real animal. We can't have a real pet on set, and it does make sense for a dog to be CGI. That isn't really my complaint, but I would say that this teaser just kind of triggered that feeling of the heavy overuse of green screens and CGI, which we have had with the past 3 to 4 years of DCU films, and I couldn't notice, but this film did kind of give me similar feelings to The Flash, which came out in 2023, and there's many shots in this teaser which are slow motion and they're slowed down and kind of dramatic camera pans whilst Superman's in slow motion, and yes, visually it looks quite cool, but it just looks incredibly over-edited, I guess you could say, and the CGI is very, very heavy in this trailer. So we're really going to go back to another huge monster ripping down and breathing fire or squirting things out in the middle of a city. I feel like I can already read this film, and that doesn't really excite me too much. So I do hope I walk into the cinema and I'm blown away, because if the movie's what I'm thinking it's going to be, and the visual style is if that's the film, and the visual style is the same all the way throughout, and we're going to keep that for the next few DCU films, then I don't think my heart's going to be in this. Really? Is this it? Is this visually how the film's going to look? Because, yeah, I'm not in love, but hopefully when the film comes out, I feel a different way. So guys, thank you very much for listening to, I guess you could say, today's rant. And tell me what you think about the Superman trailer. Did you love it? Did you not? Tell me what you think, because, yeah, I mean, I was looking forward to this. I was excited. I was, anticipating the new release of this, but I was anticipating the new release of this DCU, but yeah, I've got to say I'm slightly disappointed by the whole visual and cinematic style of it, and it does kind of affect the film for me. So, tell me what you think about the Superman teaser trailer in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.